Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at the 50/50 Podcast Accelerator. And our guest today is Alan Newman. I've known Alan for too many years, probably 35 or 40 years. He is likely the most interesting entrepreneur I've ever met. He's been involved in lots of interesting companies. He was involved with Gardner Supply when they first started, and we were talking about all the old tech crap we had back in those days. And then he went and started a company called Seventh Generation, which you may have heard of. And he then went on to start Magic Hat, which was a very successful microbrewery. But Alan will tell you it wasn't about the beer, it was about the community. And I agree with that. But today we're going to talk about something completely different. Today we're going to talk about entrepreneurship, retirement, and death. Those are all three things that Alan is passionate about today. And they happen to be three things I'm passionate about too. So let's bring Alan on and we'll start the conversation. Hey, Alan, how are you today?
Excellent, John. Excellent, Josh. Life is
Cool,
good.
cool. I'm glad we're getting a chance to do this. It'll be a whole bunch of fun. So let's talk about where is your passion around entrepreneurship, retirement, and death? And I know you've had a near-death experience, so we might want to talk about that a bit because that's really interesting. But also, uh, before we started this, we got into a pretty interesting conversation about what death looks like today for many baby boomers versus what it looked like, say, 5 or even 10 years ago.
Well, I was born in 1946, which is, a large part of who I am and what I've done. 1946, for those of you who were not around, is the leading edge of the baby boomer population. And so behind me throughout my lifetime has been the single largest group of consumers with disposable income that the world has ever seen. And, we share um, a lot of cultural cues and a lot of values that we grew up together with, from fighting against a war to giving women the right to control their bodies, to civil rights, to 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 making schools open to all people equally. And I find that as long as I do things that entertain me, there are enough people behind me to follow along. If I were younger, which, by the way, I'm not, and if I was going to start yet another business, which, by the way, I'm not, um, it would be the death and dying business. I actually started down that path, just looking at opportunity, looking at, where are the demographics in our country going? And we're aging rapidly. We're staying alive longer, which makes the whole concept of retirement change differently. And if I was going to do another business, I have issues with the way we view death and dying in our country. It's very sterile. It's you got two choices. You either get buried or you get cremated, and you generally have a religious ceremony that talks about how that religion sees death and dying, which is not really how I see it. Um, and so I think it's time for our generation, who is now coming to the age where we are, you know, um, approaching death and dying, that we're looking at the options and we're going, there has to be other options, as there were other options to the war, as there were other options to birth control and to abortions. There have to be other options because we like options. When was the last time you went to a restaurant, you ordered something off the menu and you didn't change some of the ingredients around? I mean, it's what we do. And so I just think we're approaching death, with fear and with a lot of judgment. And going back to your earlier comment, I had an experience when I was in my 30s where I had a minor operation, picked up an infection. Nobody believed that the infection was there until my temperature hit 106.5. They threw me on an ice bed. I felt myself leaving my body. It's the typical out of body experience. And I went to the light, the loving, lovely light, and it was, really attractive. And I heard a voice saying, "Are you ready?" I said no, and I came back down into my body. I heard the doctor and my mother talking about, we got him. And it gave me a different view about dying, I think, than a lot of people. So throughout life, I've never been scared of dying. And I think most people carry around this fear of the unknown. And the dying is clearly unknown. My little view into it was hardly um, painful. I mean, it was a delightful experience. And so don't get me wrong. I have absolutely no interest in dying. I'm a happy little camper in my life and with my life. But I think we need to start accepting and giving people some options that they can explore, that doesn't look at death as something that's going to be painful and is something to be avoided. And you were go ahead. You speak. I could ramble forever, as you know.
Well, I'm curious what those options might be.
Well, the business I was doing was really based on two pillars. Um, One of them was that the body could be composted rather than um, cremated.
Yep.
And composting the body, we're talking about something that's been done for, thousands of years. I mean, how do you think they got rid of bodies, in the year 1000? They put them out in the sun and they composted. Farmers compost dead animals all the time, and it gets rid of the body. It doesn't inject it with all sorts of chemicals, and the body becomes one with the land, and it helps grow either grains for livestock or remains, help grows trees. It could be remembrances, living remembrances. So I think, composting to me was what I was looking at. For me personally, I've always had a thing about funeral pyre. And I personally would love to go on a funeral pyre, but the business was really focused on composting. And then the second part of it was celebration. Um, I was looking at
So I'm curious, is composting green burial, are they synonymous?
they all there are many things that fall into the category of green burial.
Okay.
Um, it Composting is considered one of them, as is wrapping the person. Don't shoot them up with chemicals. Let their body essentially compost underground. They
Right.
wrap them in a cloth rather than a casket, and buried usually among the trees, um, without a
My
lot of
my my,
disruption.
my sister-in-law had that done. That was her wish.
That's one that's taking off more rapidly than composting, even though it really is a form of composting.
Sure.
But more important to me than how the body was disposed of was the process of approaching death and dying.
Yes.
And to me, that was a time to appreciate one's life. And over the last 10 years, I've been to a bunch of funerals, and only one that I can think of was a religious ceremony when the person died. Every other one, the family waited anywhere between 3 months and 12 months from the time the person died. And it didn't strike me until I was putting together this business plan that that made a lot of sense, because when the person dies, the family and the close friends, they're grieving. They're missing that person. The person who's died, they're fine. They've gone on to whatever's next. But those that stay behind, are sad to miss that person. Um, and so the grieving process, there's no reason for that to be a public event, in my opinion. Why should the grieving family have to worry about putting on an event where all the people are coming who either knew or didn't know, and has to get food together for it? So why not do a small family thing for grieving, and then 6, 12 months later, do a memorial service where people talk about what that person meant. And that to me is more of how I see this going. Does that
Yeah.
answer? Is that clear?
Yeah, that makes sense. We did that with my father, actually.
Yeah.
Is that, and I think this only works for people who are basically either atheist or agnostic.
You know,
If somebody's religious, um, would they do a religious ceremony? Like if you're Jewish, it's within 24 hours, and then maybe 6, 9 months later, do a memorial.
I think the answer to your question is, of course. You know, um, Really, what I think our generation, and I include you, even though you're a young lad, I still include you in my generation.
A young
Um,
lad of 72, by the way.
exactly. You're a young lad of 72. I got 7 years on you. And that's a lot. Um,
It is.
and I forgot where I was because I'm old. Um, what did you interrupt me from saying?
You were gonna talk about, or I asked the question, if somebody's
Yeah.
religious, they do the
Oh, sure.
religious
Yeah,
ceremony,
I think
and then 3, 6, 9 months, they do a memorial, which to me makes a lot of sense if you're religious.
And the answer is, of course, because really what our generation has done is taken away the hard and fast rules and made everything grayer,
Yeah,
and there is no right or wrong way to die or to experience death. Everybody has to do it in their own way. So my business was really going to be set up for those people, recognizing, like craft beer. Craft beer does not serve 100% of the consumers. It's a niche.
yeah,
And within that niche, Magic Hat served an even smaller niche in that world. I'm a niche guy. And I don't expect that 100% of the people dying would ever want to be involved in my death and dying business. But what shocked me was that when I was heavily into getting this business started, um, people's immediate response to me was, "You out of your fucking mind?" And within 10 minutes, within 5 minutes, they're asking where they could sign up. So I think people weren't given choices, and people don't see things that they can't see. I mean,
yeah.
um,
This is part of the problem, and here's what I'm thinking, Alan, is that what you're saying is a business, I think, is actually a good idea. And the truth is, it's not very hard to do those stuff on your own.
no,
Um, and I think, especially with entrepreneurs, let's talk about entrepreneurs and their mindsets. They don't
yeah.
ever believe they're going to die. They believe their business is going to go on forever. And retirement is like an
For
anathema
other
to them.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for other
Not for
people.
me. Retirement's not for me. And then
No.
you get to like, I got hit like a ton of bricks yesterday, realizing my persona is no longer a business guy. I don't know what my persona is, but it's not business guy anymore.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult. Um,
I I know the feeling.
and this is from somebody who teaches people about how to avoid seller's remorse.
Yeah.
And I
Um,
and I knew it was going to come the first time it came, and I was not prepared for how brutal it actually is. And this time around, I'm trying to figure out, well, if I'm not business guy, who am I?
um, yeah, it once it became obvious to me, and I never, that N word comes up, I find, as I
Right.
age, the
Yeah.
N word comes up frequently. I just took up smoking cigars, something that I swore I would
Ugh.
never, ever do,
Yeah.
but every week there's a new never. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, tell me again where we were.
Well, I was talking about
Oh,
business owners
yeah.
with,
I never ever did I ever think about retirement. I was one of those people who really loved doing what I did, and
me too.
I was always entertained, and my successes were based on businesses that entertained me, and luckily there were enough other people who were entertained by the same sick kind of weird humor that I have that to come along. But I think all of a sudden for me, and it was probably about your age, but it had other things. I took over a business during the pandemic that had gone out of business, and for some reason thought I could, I'm arrogant as hell. Yeah, Boston Beer says you want to start 5 businesses in 5 years. I go, oh yeah, sure. Why not? And off I go. Um, so arrogance is my greatest strength and my greatest weakness. I'm arrogant enough to think that I can pull this stuff off, and I, it all of a sudden I had this failure, um, and it was the first time that I ever had to walk away from a business. I've had other failed businesses, but they were all closed down neatly. Um, this one, I literally had to walk away, give my shares back to my ex-partner, and say, "Hey, I can't do this. You need to take it back." Um, and shortly thereafter, one of my best friends died, um, and he and I had gotten very to be good friends. We knew each other a long time, and over the last 10 years, we became much better friends. And we both had the same illness. We both loved starting and building businesses. And um, I thought I could make this business Arts Riot work. And as much as I knew how to do it, I didn't have the mental or the physical capacity to pull it off. There were extenuating circumstances, but there's always extenuating circumstances. Um, and this friend of mine had done a very similar thing. He had dug a hole, which he had done numerous times before. The difference was he was 73, 72, and he no longer had the capacity to dig himself out. And when he died, I said, if I don't accept, my version of retirement, which is not the same as a lot of other people's, but it's my version of retirement, then I'm going to end up dead. Um, and it took me 2 years, uh, at least 2 years, to accept that I am retired. I don't fit the normal version. I don't go play golf every day. I don't go to the country club. But I have stuff that I do,
Yeah.
and um, I have a beautiful balance right now, and I'm kind of thrilled that I can still contribute, but I'm not responsible for anything anymore. And that to me is the key for retirement. I'm not responsible for anybody's business. I'm not responsible for anybody's job. I just do what I can to help.
So for me, what I found was that I had a major cancer event 17 years ago, and I've been re-diagnosed with two types of cancer now. But what I realized is over the last 17 years, slowly but surely, my business disappeared. And it didn't happen overnight, and I didn't even notice it until yesterday, believe it or not. And here I am saying, gee, my world is I help other people create personally and economically sustainable businesses. I'm damn good at it, but I can't get people to play anymore. Actually, I probably could. I'm just not willing to do the strategies I
Do
used when I was 50 to get somebody to do business with me. It's too much damn work. And I'm just not willing to do that
I
much work anymore.
I totally get it. And it it I just gave this lecture to a friend of mine. It's shocking how much your ego takes a beating. I mean, I never would have realized how ego driven I was until I left. The first time, when I left Seventh Generation, when I left Magic Garden Supply Company, I felt it. And then when Seventh Generation started, I became heavily emotionally attached to Seventh Generation and the brand. And when I had a disagreement with my partner and I was summarily dismissed, um, it took a while. I would call people who I considered my friends, and they wouldn't take my phone calls. Um, and it shocked
Right. It,
me.
it
I mean,
happened. I mean, it's shocking how fast that happens.
it is,
Yeah.
and it's not something you can learn. because it happened to me with Magic Hat as well. Um,
It happens every time you go
you,
through,
s- yeah,
when you disappear. Like I left the wealth management business in January.
hmm, yeah,
No, it's like crickets from that
you're
world.
gone. Yeah,
And I'm
you're gone.
gone. When I was in my vending and food service company, I was one of the five best known guys in the industry. I taught tons of people operations and people management, all sorts of shit. And the year I sold the business, I had 3 phone calls. I used to get 3 phone calls a week. And it's as much as you know is coming, you're still not prepared
Shocked.
for it.
No, no.
And if you're an entrepreneur or a private business owner listening to this is an area where working with a therapist might be a useful thing for you.
Try psychedelics. I just,
Well, psychedelics is
it,
a form of therapy, so we can.
it's, I find that trying to explain this to somebody is like trying to explain to a woman what pregnancy and a birth is going to be like.
you
It can't be done.
you can explain it, but it doesn't.
That you,
And this is one of the big, um, gigantic holes that entrepreneurs have is they don't believe it's going to happen to them. They've heard the stories. They've got friends who have sold businesses and within 6 months have been very happy. Heck, I got a 95-year-old uncle that had a restaurant. He sold it 15 years ago and he still complains every day about it.
yeah, yeah. Well, that the mountain group, that group you talked about earlier, by the way,
Yeah.
we should reconfigure because all those people are now dealing with aging and retirement. So it might be a fun thing to do. But back in
Suzanne
those
has actually
days,
mentioned that. Suzanne's my wife, by the way.
yeah, yeah, I knew that actually.
I know, but
Um,
the listeners don't.
um, well, I forgot again where I was. I keep forgetting where I am. Luckily, I remember where I am. It's just
You're in your
um,
house right
ins-
now, Alan, in case you didn't
yeah,
know.
I knew that. I can see the picture behind me. So
So
where do you want to go with this?
what's the
What would be
biggest
what's
yeah. Excuse me. We have a few minutes left, and I'm curious what you believe is the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make, because you've been through that whole realm for a really long time, and I think there's some wisdom there that I would love our listeners to get.
um let me tell a story
Sure.
because in my day, I used to get at least one person a week contacting me. Hey, I've got an idea for a business. Will you tell me what you think? And I every time I did that, and I did a lot of it because I thought it was important. Um, I always started with this story. I'm thinking it was 83, maybe 84, somewhere in the mid 80s. Some guy showed up and who I knew, and he handed me a business plan. And he said, "Would you do me a favor? Would you read this and let me know what you think?" And I go home and I read this thing, and I'm going, "Oh my God, this guy's out of his fucking mind." Um, you know, he had this idea. He was going to put an ice cream factory in the middle of a farmland, and it was going to become the number one tourist attraction in the state of Vermont. I said, "Ben, this is the stupidest thing I have ever seen in my life. You know, what the hell are you thinking here? What makes you think that people are going to come to the middle of nowhere to see an ice cream plant?" And he goes, "We're going to make it different. We're going to make it so that it's really special." Obviously, it was Ben Cohen, Ben and Jerry's, who built this plant in the middle of what used to be nowhere. The world has now built up around them, and they are, in fact, the number one. The reason I tell this story is entrepreneurship is about seeing an opportunity and a path that nobody else sees. And I think that there has to be a lot of commitment behind it, because the path to going from idea to execution is one where everybody will tell you why it won't work. And they're right. It won't work because the way you thought of it is a fantasy. But if you start moving forward, and the thing that separates entrepreneurs from everybody else to me is we're willing to start moving forward without really knowing what the world's going to look like. We have a direction that we go in, and we're willing to figure it out as we go.
So Alan, we need to end it here. Unfortunately, we're out of
Oh,
time.
okay.
And as unfortunately, this time goes by too fast. So are you willing to talk to some folks if they're interested to speak with you?
Oh, probably. I mean, if they're interested.
Okay. Well, how would somebody contact you if they wanted to?
Probably email is the best.
And what's your email address?
Alan, ALAN, at all one word, alchemyandscience.com.
Cool. And I've got two things I'd like you to do. First, I'd like you to go and give us an honest rating review of this podcast. If you love it, give us 5 stars. If you hate it, you can give me 1 star, and I might cry for a little while, but I'll probably get over it. And the second thing is, if you liked what you heard, you said, gee, I'm a business owner and I've got something to add to the world, I'd love to talk to you about being a guest on our podcast. Really easy to do so. Just send me an email at jpatrick@stage2solution, that's the number 2 and solution is singular.com, and say, hey, Josh, I'm interested in being on your podcast. I think I've got a good story, and we'll set up a time to talk. So this is Josh Patrick, and we're with Alan Newman, and you're at the 50/50 Accelerator podcast. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see